Hello everyone, welcome to our new video. In the last video we talked about conditional statements, if statement. So let's start with an example directly, and then we will also introduce the switch statement. If we are checking a conditional statement, such as, let's say we have my string and we want to check if this is equal to some name such as Homer, and if this is true, then we might have some calculations within this block of code here. Suppose we want to assign this to 12, and then if the statement here is not true, then we have an else part, and we can actually write this with an else if, and we can continue to check other statements. And if all these statements are not true, then we can add another else part, and that will be executed. So in an else if part, we can check other conditions such as my string equals to Adam, and then in this case, if this statement is true, then we will assign this variable as, let's say, 30. Then we can continue to have as many as we want. I mean, we can add these else if parts, and we can continue checking some other statements, let's say Lisa, and in this case, if this is true, we will assign our variable equals to 70, okay? And finally, if none of these are, if the previous statements are not true, then we will come to the else part, and we have our parentheses as usual, and we can assign, let's say, our variable as NA, okay? And at the beginning, you can give this my string some value, okay? Let's say my string equals to Mary. Let's say we can execute this, and we can check our if statements. So if we check our variable according to its latest value, we can see that it is assigned to NA because my string is equals to Mary, and these conditional statements are not true, and it will come to the else part, okay? But if we change to, let's say, Adam, and if we run this again, you can see that our variable is assigned to 30, okay? So this is given here. So we can now see an example for the switch statement. So let's say a switch statement. Again, we can have our string, let's say, equals to Adam or some other name. Now, for the switch statement, we can directly write a one-line code, and we will simplify and have a more compact representation. We will have the expression, let's say, equal to my string, and then we will have different cases here. For example, for the first, let's say, Homer is, if this is true, then we will have equal to 12, or let's say we might have some other cases, and then we have, let's say, Lisa equals to 70, or we can change these as you want. And then finally we can have an else part, and in that case we have our variable assigned to an A, okay? And we can check what's the value of our variable. So if we run this, we can see that our variable, which is 4, is equal to NA. That's because my string Adam, it doesn't match with any of these cases, okay? These names are not exactly the same as Adam, so we are going to have the variable 4 assigned to this else part, which is corresponding to NA. Okay, but you can, of course, change this. I mean, let's say my string equals to, let's say, Homer here. This time, if we run it, we see that our variable 4 is actually assigned to 12 whenever my string is equals to the exactly Homer name, I mean, as a string here. Okay, so this is actually quite compact form of writing the same code above using several if and else if statements here. We can do the same thing in a much more compact representation using the switch statement here. Okay, in that sense, this gives us additional, flexibility. You can, of course, do the same operation using the if statements. Let's do another example. Let's say my number equals to 3. And then let's say we assign our variable x according to this switch statement with different conditions. So I'm going to write my number, and I will give different possible cases for my number. So let's say if this is equals to 12, 34, 56, let's say 78, and then we have an A. So here my number is our first argument. It's basically matched to our expression. This is our expression. As we see, we didn't write this time, but both of them are equivalent. I mean, you can write this or you can directly enter my number here. And then we have arguments from 12 to NA. Basically, the switch function returns the value in the specific position requested by the my number here. So since my number is 3, the statement assigns 56 here. It's going to assign this 56 to the variable x. Okay, so we can test it. We can run it, and it is 56. Again, you can change it. Let's say if you change it to 1, so this time it will assign the first element as 12. But if we use any other value of my number less than 1 or greater than the maximum available number of terms here, which is 4. So for example, let's say we have 5 here, then it's going to assign x equals to NA. Okay, so you can see that now x equals to NA.